Hi there. You're watching Reddit Confessions. Buckle up, because this isn't your typical story of betrayal. This one begins with a shattered picture frame, and a house that suddenly felt like a stranger's. The sound of glass cracking under my sock was how I knew something had finally broken, outside of me, I mean. It was our anniversary photo. The one she'd left on the edge of the bookshelf for weeks, tilted, like she didn't care if it fell. It fell. And I didn't bother picking it up. The weird thing. The moment it shattered, I felt relief. Like the universe had finally done what I was too pathetic to do, let go of the lie we were still pretending to live. I stood there for a long time, just looking at it on the floor. Us, smiling. Her, radiant. Me, 10 pounds heavier and infinitely more hopeful. I remember how she'd kissed my cheek that day and whispered, "Promise me we'll never get boring." Funny how things age. Especially promises. I didn't notice the time until I heard the front door open. It was late. Not terribly late, just her version of late, 9:27 p.m. And of course, she walked in like she was returning from brunch. Hair untouched. Lip gloss still intact. Laugh in her voice from a conversation she clearly didn't end on her way home. She didn't even look at me when she said it. "I'll be back late." Like I was the dog. Or a houseplant. Not even a "hello." Not a "how was your day?" Just 5 syllables and a ghost of a smirk. And I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the glass. Or the silence that had stretched between us for weeks like cobwebs we refused to clear. Or maybe I just finally reached the part of heartbreak where you stop hoping they'll choose you again. I didn't shout. I didn't ask questions. I didn't demand the truth. I just said, "Don't rush. You're not welcome here anymore." She froze mid-step, like someone had pressed pause. I'd never seen her look at me like that. Not angry. Not sad. Just, confused. Like I'd spoken in another language. She blinked once. "Excuse me." I didn't repeat myself. I just stepped aside and pointed at the guest room. On the bed was her gym bag, her work clothes, and a neatly folded copy of a receipt from a place I'd never been, but she had. With him. I watched her try to calculate how much I knew, how much I'd seen, and whether I was bluffing. And then I walked past her. No tears. No last speech. No, "I hope you're happy." Just the broken glass under my foot, crunching like applause from the universe. And this was only the start. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I just lay there on the couch, staring up at the ceiling, counting every faint creak in the house like it owed me answers. I didn't cry, though my chest kept tightening like my ribs were trying to hug a ghost that wasn't there anymore. In the guest room down the hall, she slept. Or maybe she didn't. I wouldn't know. I didn't check. For once, I didn't care if she needed a blanket or if the fan made her too cold. At 3:42 a.m., I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened our wedding album. Yeah. Pathetic, I know. But I needed to see who we used to be. There was a photo of us under that old maple tree behind the venue. The leaves had turned gold that day, and she had leaned her head on my shoulder like I was everything she ever wanted. I remember how tightly she held my hand. How real it felt. I was so sure she meant it. And now, all I could think of was how easily she handed her loyalty to someone else. How easily I let her. In the morning, I made coffee. Not for her. For me. I sat at the kitchen island and waited. She finally emerged from the hallway like a stranger, dressed in one of her power blazers, holding her phone like it was a shield. Her eyes flicked toward me. We didn't speak. She went to the fridge, grabbed almond milk, poured it into her fancy overpriced protein bottle like this was just another Tuesday. And then she said the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. So, you're serious about last night? I couldn't even respond at first. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I once believed would grow old beside me was now asking if I was serious about finally acknowledging that she broke us. She leaned on the counter and waited for me to fold. That was our pattern. She'd push the boundaries, and I'd cave with a nervous smile and some awkward attempt to make peace. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. I was done being the emotional janitor who cleaned up after the messes she never admitted to making. You've been gone for a long time, Mallory, I finally said. You just didn't bother to pack. She didn't like that. Her lips parted like she was going to say something scathing, but nothing came out. And that silence? It said more than any lie ever could. I slid a small folder across the counter. Inside were printouts of texts I'd found on our shared tablet. Not just one conversation, 3. Different names. Different tones. Same betrayal. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. She knew what was in there. She just stared at it, then at me, like I had done something unforgivable. You went through my stuff, she finally hissed. That's what got her. Not the fact that she was emotionally investing in multiple men. Not the fact that she was sneaking off to bars after work and lying about strategy meetings. No, what really upset her was that I had proof. I didn't go through anything, I said calmly. You left it unlocked. Like you wanted me to find it. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just whispered, "This is complicated," and walked out the door. No slam. No tears. Just that sickening, sterile scent of her perfume trailing behind her as if nothing had happened. The door clicked shut. And I realized. I had no idea who she even was anymore. By Thursday morning, I had officially become the guy who opens his front door expecting to find dignity on the porch and instead finds his own shadow shrinking away in embarrassment. There was no big confrontation. No emotional confession. No fight to win me back. Mallory had simply gone radio silent. She didn't text. She didn't call. And she definitely didn't come back to the house that night, or the night after. The space between us grew so fast it felt like gravity had reversed, and I was the only one still trying to stay grounded. The weirdest part? I still kept listening for her keys at the door. Like some conditioned dog who hadn't realized he'd been abandoned. I hated myself for that. Every creak in the floor, every car that passed, I thought, maybe she's back. Maybe she's going to say she made a mistake. Maybe there's a version of this story that doesn't end with me being discarded like last season's throw blanket. But no. The only thing that returned to the house was silence. That Friday, I hit rock bottom in the saddest way possible. I showed up at her workplace. I know. I wish I could say I did it to reclaim my power or deliver some final mic drop moment of truth. But the reality? I needed answers. Not just about the other guy, but about how we got here. I wanted her to look me in the eye and tell me it was over. I couldn't keep living in the in-between. So I took an early lunch, changed into the cleanest shirt I could find, and drove to the sleek glass building where she worked. The receptionist looked up, eyebrows raised. "Can I help you?" I gave her my name and asked if Mallory was available. She hesitated. Mallory stepped out. "I think she's on a late client lunch." It was 11:12 a.m. client lunch. Sure. And that's when I saw him. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew it was him. He was tall. Polished. The kind of guy who looked like his hair knew secrets. He was walking out of the elevator holding 2 iced lattes and laughing at something Mallory was whispering into his ear. She was standing beside him, pressed a little too close, wearing the green dress she always claimed she hated, so why was she suddenly wearing it now? She didn't see me at first. I was off to the side, behind a column, frozen like a coward. I could have left. I should have. But I stepped forward. And in that brief moment when her eyes caught mine, her smile evaporated. She blinked. Her entire body shifted, subtle but sharp, like someone caught touching a hot stove. "Ellison," she said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" And that guy, he looked at me like I was an Amazon return that didn't belong on the porch. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't introduce himself. He just leaned in close to her and whispered something I didn't catch, then walked away without looking back. Mallory waited until he was out of earshot, then crossed her arms. "You can't just show up here." I was shaking. Not with anger. With humiliation. "Who is he?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She didn't answer right away. She just exhaled, like I was exhausting. Like I was the problem. "He's a friend," she finally said. "A friend you take to lunch at 11 in the morning? In that dress? Don't do this here, Ellison." That's when I realized I wasn't just unwanted in our home, I wasn't even welcome in her reality anymore. "I just wanted to understand how we went from forever to this," I said. "You could have just told me." She paused. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was going to say something human. Something true. Instead. "You were always too safe," she said quietly. "And eventually, safe becomes boring." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My voice wouldn't come out, and even if it had, I wouldn't have known what to say. So I turned around and walked out. But as I reached my car, someone called after me. It wasn't Mallory. It was him. And what he said. That changed everything. I didn't expect him to follow me. I was already halfway to my car, keys trembling in my hand, heart threatening to pound through my ribs, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned slowly, expecting Mallory, maybe even hoping it was her. But it wasn't. It was him. He had that same half-smirk on his face. Not cocky. Not exactly. Just smug in a way that said he thought he knew everything, about me, about her, about how this whole triangle would play out. "You're Ellison, right?" he asked, like we were old high school acquaintances at a reunion. I nodded slowly. My mouth was dry. He took a step closer, stopping just outside my comfort zone, and tilted his head like he was trying to read the last chapter of a book he hadn't started yet. "Listen, man. I didn't mean for things to go this far." That sentence hit me like a crowbar to the stomach. Not just because of the words, but because of how easily he said them. Like we were both standing on neutral ground. As if he wasn't the guy who'd slipped into my life like a virus while I was still making her coffee and believing in our future. I couldn't speak, so he kept going. "She told me you guys were basically done," he added. "I wouldn't have gotten involved otherwise." Liar. Or maybe just delusional. Either way, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mallory had fed him the classic script, "We're separating. He's checked out. It's complicated." And he had eaten it up like it was gospel. I wanted to scream at him, shake him, ask him if he ever stopped to wonder why she was still living with me, still sleeping under the same roof as the man she claimed to be done with. Instead, I muttered, "You didn't have to follow me." He looked down at his expensive shoes, then back up. "I just thought you should know. I'm not trying to make a mess. I didn't plan on falling for her." Falling. That word stuck in my brain like a rusty nail. Falling was something that happened to teenagers and movie characters. Not grown men who pried open marriages to find warmth in someone else's kitchen. "She's married," I finally managed to say, voice cracking. "To me. Still." He didn't flinch. "Yeah, well, you might want to get that paperwork started." And then he walked away. Like it was just another Friday. I sat in my car for 20 minutes afterward, engine off, hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Every muscle in my body was vibrating with rage and shame and something I didn't even have a name for. A mix of heartbreak and embarrassment so raw it felt like my insides had been set on fire. That night, Mallory didn't come home. She didn't text. Didn't call. No explanations. Just absence. Emptiness. I stayed up until 4 a.m. again, scrolling through old photos like a desperate man trying to remember the moment the light died in her eyes. There wasn't one. It didn't happen suddenly. It had faded slowly, the way a familiar scent disappears from your pillow after they stop sleeping on it. At 5:07 a.m., I opened a blank document on my laptop and titled it, Divorce Checklist. I didn't know what came next. But I knew I was done waiting. By the time the sun finally dragged itself over the rooftops, I hadn't slept in 2 days. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every chair felt like it had been sat in by someone else. Every hallway echoed with footsteps that weren't hers, or maybe weren't mine. I walked in circles for hours, picking things up only to put them back down again. I started the laundry and forgot about it. Brewed a full pot of coffee and never poured a cup. I was floating, like I had detached from my own skin. Like I was watching my life collapse through the crack of a door I wasn't allowed to close. She came back Saturday morning. No warning. No text. Just the sound of the front door creaking open like the start of a horror film. Her heels clicked against the tile in the hallway, soft and casual, as if this were any other morning. She dropped her keys in the dish by the door like she hadn't ghosted her own husband for 36 hours. I didn't say anything at first, I just stood frozen in the kitchen, half expecting to wake up from this. I wanted to ask where she'd been, but what was the point? We both already knew. She rounded the corner and froze when she saw me. Her hair was tied up. She wore the same black coat she'd had on the day I saw her with him. And she had the audacity to smile like I was a friend she hadn't seen in years. I didn't expect you to be up, she said, walking toward the fridge like this was some sitcom. I didn't answer. She pulled out orange juice and leaned against the counter. No apology. No explanation. Not even a hint of shame. So, she began, I've been thinking, maybe we should try a break. Not a divorce. Just, time apart. I think it might help both of us get some clarity. Clarity. She used that word like it was a gift. Like I should be grateful she was handing me a courtesy timeout while she danced around with someone new. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. You're asking for permission to continue cheating without guilt. She didn't blink. You're being dramatic. No. I'm finally not being silent. Her expression changed, just slightly. I think she expected the doormat version of me. The guy who apologized when she forgot our anniversary. The one who used to bring her coffee and a folded blanket when she stormed off during arguments. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Not today. I walked over to the kitchen table, grabbed the manila folder I'd been working on, and dropped it in front of her. What's this? She asked, not touching it. Proof, I said. Of everything. Names. Dates. Messages. Hotel check-ins. Screenshots. It's all in there. She hesitated. Then slowly opened the folder, and as her eyes scanned the first few pages, her breath caught. For the first time in weeks, she looked cornered. Not guilty, necessarily. But caught. She closed the folder, lifted her chin, and said something I'll never forget. You really went through all that trouble just to hurt me back. It was so twisted, so backward, I almost laughed. No. I did it to remind myself I'm not crazy. She stepped away from the counter, collected her bag without saying another word, and walked toward the door. I called after her. Where are you going? Her reply came without turning around. To get the rest of my things. And then, I'll figure it out. And just like that, she was gone again. Not even a slammed door. Just silence. Heavy, final, and terrifying. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and stared at the place where she'd just been. Then I looked down at the folder. But it wasn't closed. Something had fallen out. A photo. An old one. From the early days. We were smiling. We looked like people who believed in forever. I picked it up and sat with it for a long, long time. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. You don't know half of what she's hiding. The moment I read that text, you don't know half of what she's hiding, the floor beneath my reality cracked again. It came from an unknown number, no context, no name. And yet, it didn't feel like a prank or a wrong number. It felt intentional. Like someone had been watching all along, waiting for the exact moment to step out of the shadows. I stared at the message for a solid 5 minutes. I reread it at least 10 times. My first instinct was denial. What else could there be? I had already uncovered her texts, her hotel receipts, the flirty photos she sent to the guy from her office, the same guy who had spoken to me like he was doing me a favor. I had already lived the worst of it. What could possibly be worse? Still, I replied. Who is this? No answer. I waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Still nothing. And just when I started to convince myself it was a hoax, another message came through. A name. One I hadn't heard in years. Ask her about Leland. I nearly dropped the phone. Leland wasn't someone Mallory ever talked about. He was a rumor. A blur. An unfinished chapter from her college days that she always brushed off like it was too boring to mention. All I knew was that they dated briefly before she transferred schools. She told me he had been controlling. She never elaborated, and I never pushed. I thought I was respecting her privacy. Turns out, I was just walking blindfolded into an avalanche. I started digging. Social media. Alumni pages. Reverse phone lookups. It took 2 hours and a lot of digital dust, but I found him. Leland Ramsey. He hadn't posted much in years, but what was there painted a different picture than the one Mallory had sketched. Former law student. Now in real estate. Married once. Divorced. No kids. His face looked weathered, tired eyes, short beard, someone who had lived through something big and never fully recovered. I debated for a long time. Then I sent him a message. You don't know me, but I think we both knew Mallory. He replied within minutes. If you're her husband, then yes. I know exactly who you are. That sent a jolt through my spine. I typed carefully. Did you send me that message earlier? No. But I'm not surprised you got it. What does that mean? It means Mallory leaves Wreckage. Always has. I tried to warn her last husband. Guess it's your turn. Last husband. I reread it 3 times before I could even breathe. My heart pounded. My palms turned cold. I blinked, confused. What do you mean, last husband? You really don't know, do you? And then, just like that, he sent a PDF. I hesitated before opening it. My brain was screaming not to. But my hands moved anyway. It was a scanned copy of a marriage license. Mallory. And him. Married. 12 years ago. It was real. Stamped. Signed. She was married before. And she never told me. Not once. In 8 years together, not a single mention. Nothing on the record she showed me when we did our taxes, nothing when we talked about our future. She lied. Flat out erased an entire chapter of her life. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor hard, but I didn't care. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just sat there, replaying every single conversation we'd ever had. All the trust. All the intimacy. All the times I thought I knew her. And suddenly, I didn't even know her last name for sure. I messaged Leland again. My fingers were shaking. Why did you two split? His answer came back like a hammer to the gut. She emptied our joint savings account and left. Said she wanted a new life. I found out months later she was living with someone else. She disappears when things get inconvenient. She rewrites people. I sat there for hours, the silence around me thick and ugly. Mallory hadn't just betrayed me. She had erased me before I ever existed. And now? I wasn't sure if she planned to do it again, or if I was just the next name on a long, invisible list. Sunday morning came cold and gray. I hadn't slept again, not even a minute. I was running on caffeine, anxiety, and this burning question that wouldn't leave my skull: how many versions of Mallory were there? And which one did I marry? Every time I tried to replay our relationship, I noticed something new. A strange gap in her timeline. A phrase that felt rehearsed. A smile that had once brought me comfort but now looked more like a practice performance. I printed the marriage license. Held it in my hands. It felt heavier than paper had any right to be. I needed to see her face when I showed it to her. I needed to hear the lie escape her lips in real time, not secondhand through whispers from old boyfriends or strangers with burner phones. Around 10:17 a.m., I heard her car pull up. She hadn't texted. She didn't need to. That was her style: leave chaos in her wake and then strut back in like she was the victim of her own destruction. I sat at the dining table with the license face up, like a landmine I was daring her to step on. She walked in carrying her phone, latte in hand, wearing sunglasses even though the sky outside was slate gray. She looked refreshed. Like she had just come from a spa. Like nothing in her life was collapsing. She set her coffee down and froze when she saw the paper. "Ellison," she said cautiously, "what is that?" "You tell me," I answered, watching her carefully. She slowly approached the table and picked up the sheet. Her eyes scanned it. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. I thought maybe, for once, she was going to be honest. Maybe she'd sit down and come clean about her past, about everything. But instead, she laughed. A soft, bitter laugh that made my stomach turn. "That was a long time ago," she said finally. "I didn't think it mattered." "You didn't think your marriage mattered?" I asked, my voice cracking more than I wanted it to. "You stood in front of me and said you'd never been married before. You lied for 8 years. She rolled her eyes. "It was annulled. He was toxic. It barely lasted a year." "That's not what he said." That stopped her cold. Her shoulders stiffened. "You talked to Leland." "I didn't have to. He found me." Mallory's entire posture changed. She stepped back from the table like the name had burned her. For a split second, I saw something that looked like fear, but it was gone before I could confirm it. "I don't know what he told you," she said, quieter now. "But he's not innocent. Neither are you." Silence. Thick. Charged. Then I said something I never thought I would. "I'm filing for divorce. Today." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. But I could see it, just under her perfectly polished exterior, a flicker of panic. Not grief. Not regret. Panic. The kind that comes from losing control, not losing love. "That's ridiculous," she whispered. "You're overreacting." "No. I've been underreacting for years." She opened her mouth to argue, but just then, there was a knock at the door. We both froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. Neither was she, clearly. I walked over, cautiously, and opened the door. A man stood there. Mid-40s, clean-cut, wearing a windbreaker and holding a small leather folder. "Mr. Ellison Grady?" he asked, glancing down at a clipboard. "Yes. I'm serving you documents. There's a lien filed against your joint property. Looks like some old business debts in your wife's name, but your signature's on the property title." My breath caught. I don't understand. "Everything you need is in here," he said, handing me the folder. "I recommend getting legal counsel as soon as possible." Mallory was already at my side, face pale. "Ellison, I can explain." But I was done. "No. Don't." I looked her in the eyes, really looked this time. "You didn't just break my heart. You dragged my name through your personal war zone." I walked past her and headed straight to the bedroom. I needed to be alone before I collapsed entirely. And as I shut the door behind me, I heard her voice, finally trembling. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." I didn't open the door for a long time after it closed. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to feel what silence sounded like when it wasn't powered by tension or betrayal. Just stillness. No footsteps. No fake apologies. No perfume masking the truth. Mallory left that afternoon. I didn't ask her to. She just knew. She packed what she needed, said nothing, and walked out without another word. No dramatic goodbye. No final dig. The silence between us had grown too loud to break. And just like that, she was gone. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with the debris she left behind. Financially, emotionally, spiritually. I met with a lawyer, got my name protected, started sorting out the damage. There was more than I thought. Credit cards I didn't know existed. Loans I never signed. And all of it under the illusion of our life together. But here's the part one didn't expect. The deeper I dug, the freer I felt. Each document I uncovered, each lie exposed, peeled her off me like old wallpaper. I had spent so long trying to save a version of us that only I believed in. Now I could finally see the difference between surviving someone and being saved from them. One morning, about 3 weeks later, I woke up and made coffee just for me. Not her. Not because I was waiting for the door to open again, but because it tasted good, and I wanted it. I opened the windows. Let fresh air in. Rearranged the living room. Bought a second-hand record player and started listening to old jazz albums I'd forgotten I loved. I even laughed again. Not because anything funny happened, just because it felt good to feel light again. A letter came in the mail that week. From Leland. It wasn't long. Just a few sentences. "You deserve the truth. I hope you build something real next time. Not all of us get the chance to rebuild without bitterness. Take it." I kept that letter. Framed it, actually. Because he was right. The past doesn't get to own me. It gets to teach me. And now. I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I'm just rebuilding. And for the first time in a long time, I'm doing it for me. Thanks for listening. If you've ever had someone lie to your face while smiling, I want to hear your story. What moment made you finally walk away? Drop it in the comments. This is Reddit Confessions, and if this story hit home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You're not alone. And sometimes, the end is exactly what you needed all along.